Mike, we're going to talk about 4 different guys and make the case for how they could potentially be the guy to go #1 overall. I want to start with the guy who is the odds-on favorite, the Heisman Trophy winner, and Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah, to me, he's the favorite for a reason. He has been clean from game 1 to the Big Ten championship game. And against the best competition, he showed up. In big moments, he showed up. And you've already, I think you feel the most comfortable about him because you've already seen him do it in what I'd say is a bad situation. Like last year at Cal, he way overperformed expectations with not a great wide receiving core, not a great offensive line in front of him. And so that's what, if you are the #1 overall pick, more often than not, you're going to be stepping into once you get to the NFL. So he's the favorite for a reason. I had him in my latest mock draft going #1 overall, but it won't be to the New York Giants, right? It would be to someone else if he does.
Okay, so let's talk about a non-quarterback, and we see Renner's mock draft here. And I want to go to number 8, currently in your latest mock, in Arvell Reese. So what is the case for him? Because I do see, of course, other non-quarterbacks above him, Ruben Bain, obviously, David Bailey. So what could be the situation to where Arvell Reese could potentially go #1 overall?
I think it's someone, whether it's the Titans, whether it's the Giants, who doesn't need a quarterback. And then there's not the impetus for the teams behind them to really go up and get one. The last time we kind of saw this play out was 2017, when a quarterback went top 10, but not #1 overall. That was Mitch Trubisky going #2, but Myles Garrett going #1. Will teams see him as a Myles Garrett-esque sort of prospect? I don't think so. Myles Garrett is a one-of-one dude, but Arvell Reese is a pretty freaky athlete. If he really blows up the combine, really has a great pre-draft process, I could see someone like the Giants, someone like the Titans just saying, we're not going to trade back if there's not a huge market to trade back. We're not going to pass up on a talent like Arvell Reese if he's there.
All right, what about this other guy who is also in your top 10 here in your latest mock, Ruben Bain out of Miami, who's arguably one of the most impactful D linemen in all of college football. So make the case for him to go #1 overall potentially.
Yeah, I can't wait to see him in the playoff. He has been, for my money, the best defensive player from week 1 through the end of the season since he dominated Notre Dame in that big win for them. And I think he'll be the best player on the field when they take on Texas A&M. He just is the most physically dominant defensive end in terms of power I've scouted in my decade plus of doing this. I mean, he is just strong as an ox. He looks like a defensive tackle, but he plays off the edge and still rushes the passer at a high level. I think that's kind of what everyone's looking for, is that guy who can play inside and outside at the NFL level. So him and Arvell Reese will be neck and neck for the first position player off the board. And it's kind of the same conversation with Reese. Just, do you see him as good enough to pass up on any trade opportunities someone might have to go up to #1? And do these NFL teams really not buy into this quarterback class? That's really the only way I see one of those non-QBs going #1 overall.
Okay, let's say they do buy into the quarterback classes, right? And we're going to go back to Oregon quarterback Dante Moore, who you have going 2nd overall in your latest mock. So what would be the situation or the scenario, or why would a team move up and potentially grab him over Fernando Mendoza?
I think he's more of a wild card. I think he's more physically gifted. He's a better all-around athlete. You see him better on the move, whether it's as a runner or whether it's throwing on the move. I think he's more accurate. I think he works outside the numbers better than Mendoza does. He had more pure go balls, pure wide nines out there that were on the money than anyone else in college football this past season. And he's more of a wild card. He hasn't played as much football as Mendoza has. It's kind of like an NBA lottery pick where everyone goes oohs and ahs over the true freshmen, and the guys who are seniors kind of get poo-pooed. That's kind of what Dante Moore is. He really hasn't played a ton of football, so it's like, ooh, what could he be if he develops in our system? So it really will be eye of the beholder between him and Mendoza. It might come down to scheme, might come down to preference for offensive coordinator, but it would not surprise me. I think, his odds right there are pretty indicative of the chance that he still has a real shot of going #1.
Yeah, we saw it there, plus 250 to go #1 overall. Renner, we certainly appreciate it. Talking about the upcoming NFL draft, and here's a look at some important dates in the NFL. Of course, the playoffs kick off in the NFL on January 10th, and then fast forward to April 23rd. That is when the 2026 NFL draft will kick off.
With that, we bring in CBS Sports draft analyst Mike Renner. And Mike, the Giants currently have the #1 pick. So what do you believe they would do with it? And should this hold, who are some teams, right, that might want to trade up for it?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I would trade it. I think that the #1 pick will be in demand this year. The last time we had a quarterback go top 10, but not number one overall, was 2017. So usually when there's a guy up there, and I think there's probably going to be at least two guys in Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore who will be that kind of, top 10 sort of pick. Usually they go number one because a bidding war ensues and you got to get to the top of the line to get it because it's such a valuable position. So when that's the case, you get a haul. You don't just get the number 5 overall pick and then a second rounder. Usually it comes with another first rounder, another day 2 pick. So having the number 1 overall pick usually starts a bidding war. That's what I do if I'm the New York Giants.
Okay, that's what you would do. But we know teams don't always do what analysts or people like myself suggest they do. So if they don't trade the pick, who should they select? Because clearly they're not going to go after a QB, because I think it's pretty safe to say that Jackson Dart is their guy.
See, that's where it gets difficult, because the best players after them are defensive linemen, in my opinion. And when you look at the Giants team, objectively, that's not where they need help, right? They got so many defensive linemen in it. They got 2 top 5 picks along their defensive line. They got another guy they're paying a lot of money in, Brian Burns. They got Dexter Lawrence on the interior. It's like, I don't think they need one. Maybe Arvell Reese, the linebacker from Ohio State, because he kind of bridges the gap. He can be both. He can make you play those hybrid fronts that everyone wants to play in the NFL nowadays. Now, it's going to depend on who their defensive coordinator is and what they want at that position. But he's the one that's a maybe, but there really is no clean fit for them. That's why in my latest mock, I'm trading back and going wide receiver, because I think that's ideally where you would want to go. You'd want to get an offensive tackle or a wide receiver to get Jackson Dart some help. That's how you would build this thing going forward.
No, I definitely agree with that. Now let's go to another team, right, in New Jersey. We're talking about the New York Jets. So we know they need a QB. Justin Fields is not the answer. Okay, Tyrod Taylor, he's way past his prime. He's not the answer. What would a trade look like between the Giants and the Jets for the Jets trying to get that number 1 pick and selecting one of the top QBs?
Yeah, I think it would look something like their 2 first rounders from this year and either their last first rounder in 2027 or a day 2 pick in 2027. That's kind of the realm of what it would take to make that sort of leap historically. But again, in this situation, the Giants might just take the best offer given where they're at, given where their needs are. So it might cost a little less because there's not a Caleb Williams in this class. There's not a blue chip Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow really sitting there, but there are very good prospects. And specifically, I have them going up for Fernando Mendoza of Indiana because of the fit with Tanner Engstrand, the offensive coordinator there. What he does, what he brought over from Detroit, I think is perfect for Mendoza's strengths, working the middle of the football field, being a pocket passer. It's something that didn't hamper Jared Goff into success there, and I think would be perfect for Fernando Mendoza and what he brings to the table.
And to that point, right, this year's crop of QBs, it's not the strongest, right? We don't have any generational QB that's a can't-miss prospect, but there are teams that could use the prospective available QB. So who are some other orgs that really need to lock in on a quarterback, Mike?
I think the Raiders do, and it's not that they need it right now. It's that this franchise needs to have something to look forward to. Because if you roll into next season and it's just Geno Smith and maybe you got him a wide receiver with your top pick, and it's like, then you're hoping it's going to be better. I don't know if it's going to be, and you're probably going to lose some fans because of it. I think you got to get someone to get people excited, and they honestly look like the front runners to end up with the number 1 overall pick, given how they're playing. So I think the Raiders are the team that really does. And then the other one that's kind of like, do they, should they? It's the Cleveland Browns. They're going to have an interesting conversation on their hands, given that Shadour's playing all right for a 5th rounder, but it's still like he was a 5th rounder. Deshaun Watson's coming back next year, but do you really want him to come back given how he looked? So they're going to be one where they have an interesting conversation on their hands, whether they should attack one or not, because they'll have the 1st round pick ammo to go make a move for one.
Yeah, what a surprise, huh? Another year, and the Cleveland Browns are still trying to find their guy. So much has changed, but so much has not with the Cleveland Browns organization. Now, you just threw up your mock 10 online for CBSSports.com. So for our viewers who haven't seen it, what did you cook up for us, man?
We have a top 10 that has quarterbacks, wide receivers, and pass rushers. I think it's the best way to describe it. I love the top 2 wide receivers in this class. Carnell Tate from Ohio State, I have him going to the Browns. And then this, to me, feels like a dream scenario for the Giants. You trade back and get Jordan Tyson, the Arizona State wide receiver. These guys aren't going to be mistaken, and not a lot of prospects in this class are going to be mistaken for like generational prospects. But specifically, these two guys feel like ready-made number one wide receivers. They kind of feel like how I felt about Rome Odunze coming out of Washington, where it's just he may not be Marvin Harrison Jr., he may not be Malik Neighbors, but he's a darn good wide receiver prospect, and he has a really, really high floor. So I really like these two guys. I expect them to go highly because of that, because of their high floor, and because of the fact that you see wide receivers getting paid like $40 million a year now. So yeah, there are better prospects at like safety and Caleb Downs from Ohio State, running back and Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame, but they don't make $40 million a year. And so teams are going to covet those positions that are going to save you big bucks in free agency towards the top of the draft.
Yeah, well, we cannot wait to see how it all unfolds, and we'll see if those teams do indeed give those draft picks that you have placed them for. Mike Renner, always appreciate the insight, man.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
All right, so now here are the odds to be the number one pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. Fernando Mendoza is the favorite at -180. Then Oregon's QB Dante Moore at +250. Miami's defensive star Reuben Bain Jr. at +650. And Keldrick Falk running it out at +2,700.